Right, well, hello everyone. It's really wonderful and a little overwhelming to have so many of you here today. And in that regard, I'd like to say a warm welcome to those parts of you that are open to this contemplation today, and also to bring in those parts of you that may be a little unsure about what this session may be about. And I'd also like to give voice to my own excitement in relation to being here, and also to give voice to a small sense of nervousness, in the sense that I am hoping that I'll be able to locate the most heartfelt words and be able to move deeply into my own heart to honour the space that is rising to meet us all in this unfolding moment. So I have a couple of quotes here which I thought would sort of build on this morning's demonstrations and talks. And as this session is about inviting something more into our awareness, something beyond our ordinary mode of perception, I'm sort of thinking particularly about a sort of depth, moving into the depths of the human experience with the contemplation of a kind of living symbol. And so in that sense, there's a mystery to this, really. And so I thought these quotes were quite apt. So Goethe said, if you cannot find the words to describe it, you are on the right path. And Einstein commented, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. And Krishnamurti taught that releasing ourselves from the grip of what we know gives a sense of boundless freedom. And a particularly resonating quote for me is from Jeffrey Kripal from his book, The Flip. And he says that a radically new real can appear with the simplest of flips or reversals of perspective, roughly from the outside of things to the inside of things. That moment of realization beyond all linear thought, beyond all language, beyond all belief is what I call the flip. It is a very big deal. Such a flip is often sudden, unbidden, or traumatically catalyzed. It is also beautifully, elegantly simple. And that really, this quote really speaks to me. And the session today, really, I want to put some context around why I'm here and why I'm talking to you today. A short contemplation, meditation, and a practical exploration. So some of you here may be aware of my journey, but for those of you who are not, I would like to briefly share the fact that in the mid-2000s, I actually underwent a revelatory experience. For most of my life, I've lived with cardiac problems and ongoing complications. And in the middle of the night, in the mid-2000s, during an extremely difficult time in my life, physically and emotionally and spiritually, I actually felt something break through into my awareness. And I heard my heart saying the following words, which are on this slide here. Please, please stop this. You are killing me. This conflict is your own creation, yet you also have the power to change it. And in that moment, my life turned, it transformed, it took a deep tropological turn into something extremely different. And I had personally experienced something other reaching out towards me that I could not explain through my usual ways of making sense of the world. And I knew that I could not reduce this experience into what Kripal terms a rational rereading, where revelatory or mystical experience becomes subsumed into a specific rational framework. As Mark Vernon said this morning so beautifully, I knew deep inside, my intuition, every fibre of my being knew that I had to lean into this experience. So I went on a very long journey of discovery, trying to find frameworks, ways of explaining that would help me to understand and make meaning out of this deeply transformative experience. And I went to the Schumacher College, where I graduated with a distinction from the Masters in Holistic Science in 2014, and onward to Canterbury Christ Church University to undertake a PhD under the supervision of Angela Voss in the Faculty of Education, which is also situated in the Transformative Learning Research Group. So I completed my PhD earlier this year, and my research explored the thought of the heart in relation to the phenomenon of conflict. And I proceeded on religious philosopher Henri Corbin and archetypal psychologist James Hillman's understanding that the heart is an organ of perception, an organ of the imagination. And because of my visceral experience with my heart, it felt to me like my heart was reaching out to me, and that this wisdom wanted to be shared with me. So my work moved further into Hillman's idea that it is the heart as an organ of the imagination that takes in the images of the world as received in dynamic relationship with it, and makes sense of these images and experiences through symbolic language. And so my work moved carefully into the notion that the life we receive in relationship with the world itself is symbolic and consequently metaphoric. And it is with our senses, it is our senses that support us to make meaning through this imaginal mode of awareness. And so I'm using, in this sense, imagination in its broadest sense, inviting in more of the world than ordinary day-to-day consciousness would allow, and imaginal awareness being used here in the context that it offers an opportunity to look into the world beyond outward appearances and into the depths in psychological terms or heights in religious terms of phenomena. So this meant that I felt compelled to take the heart seriously as an organ of wisdom and knowledge. And it was the primary source of knowledge, the primary mode of knowing in communion with my rational mind. So there's a subtle difference here, so that my heart, I was not understanding the wisdom that my heart was gaining through my mind, but I was being in relationship with the world through my heart first as a primary organ of perception, and passing that wisdom to my mind. So with this foundation in place, it was possible for me to explore the head and the heart as living symbols, metaphors and way showers to make sense of the human experience. So my research flipped my focus of knowledge production out of my head or my rational mind and into my heart, committed to developing knowledge about the world through intimate conversations with my heart using depth psychologist Robert Romanishin's imaginal methodology. So this meant that I would take seriously daydreams, visionary experiences and reveries, bodily sensations. And so my commitment was to my heart as offering a primary source of information about the world, and thereby inviting more of the world into my awareness, being able to contemplate ideas that might not be possible through a more narrow state of awareness. So I'd just like to move into how Goethean inquiry played its part in the unfolding of my ongoing research. And I was really pleased to see that David introduced Goethean inquiry earlier this morning in his talk. And when I was at Schumacher College, I was introduced to Goethean science or Goethean inquiry. And Goethe himself followed the philosophy that all is in the phenomenon. There is absolutely nothing hidden. One simply needs to cultivate one's mode of perception. And he had a twofold method. Step one was he called exact sensorial perception. So studying phenomena as clearly and deeply as possible without preformed mental models, theories and classifications, listening closely and observing. And step two, exact sensorial imagination. So once he completed step one, he would move to recreating the experience that he'd had in communion with another, with a plant or with colour, in Goethe's case, in imagination to come to know the phenomena better. So he engaged his rational mind and his sensory experience, endeavouring to cultivate a way of seeing, a dynamic way of seeing beyond his rational mind, using the converse yet complementary capacity of his poetic mind and his imagination. And as scholar Jeremy Nadler states, all of Goethe's abilities were directed towards instilling vitality into the act of perception. So in this sense, we enter into a mutual interaction with the phenomenon, becoming a better, more transparent transparent instrument of knowing, as Craig Holdridge, the biologist, states. So whatever we are engaging with in this way of seeing, this particular quality of engagement comes to us. We meet the other in open curiosity through the ever unfolding dynamic flow of life, within which we all have the opportunity to become more fully ourselves through conversations with each other. And when I say each other, I am including not just other people, but also any other interaction with the more than human world, including all that lives on the trembling edges of the periphery of our vision, beckoning us beyond usual ways of knowing. And just to give a very personal experience, when I was practicing Goethean inquiry at Schumacher, I sat in relationship with quite a long time with a plant called groundsel in the Dartington grounds. And after about a week of sitting with this plant every single day for hours, I actually felt something more reaching out to me. And it was a similar experience to what I'd had all those years ago, when something else reached out to me in the night and I felt my heart speaking to me. And I struggled to kind of put into words what actually happened. But in that moment with the groundsel plant, I was struck with the deep recognition of the plant's connection with all of the elements, the environment, with all of life itself. And it was a deeply, deeply sacred moment, and made me acutely aware of the greater mystery of which we are all a part. And the interesting thing was that that particular revelatory experience was really beautiful, whereas the experience that I'd had many years earlier was deeply traumatic. And it's quite interesting to consider how these things can reach out to us in many different ways that can be, deeply traumatic or absolutely blissful. So moving on now to heart sense, which is a process that I developed in communion with my own heart over the past 4 years of my PhD research. So when I left the Schumacher College, I regularly practiced Goethe's method, applying it to absolutely everything in my life in general. And as I did this, I came to know that everything in life was deeply aware and interconnected, vibrating with light and life. And it could be said that when it came to my PhD, that I was already engaging with the world from a flipped position, engaging with my imagination regularly, participating in living inquiry with the living world. But what became increasingly apparent to me throughout my PhD and conversations with my heart using Ramanujan's methodology were the deep synergies between my heart's teachings and the conversations that I had with it and Goethe's method. So towards the end of my thesis, I outline a process that I have termed heart sense, which I define as insightful perception and considered discernment regarding daily life developed through the wisdom of and benevolent qualities associated with the heart. And what this process does is to enhance Goethe's method, bringing in the heart's imaginal awareness of the world and combining this with the heart's benevolent qualities, like kindness, openness, empathy, compassion towards the other, but also something more, this greater sense that the world is talking to us through the heart itself, moving into the more. So I'd just like to, now that foundation is in place, like to ask you, if you feel comfortable, to just enter into just a short tuning in to your heart space. So if you feel comfortable, please do just make yourself comfortable in your chair or wherever you're sitting. If it feels right to you to do so, I'd ask you to close your eyes and to just focus in on your heart space for me for a few moments. And again, if it feels comfortable to you, place your palm or your palms over your heart center. And just take some deep breaths, breathing that life-giving breath down into your heart space. Just with every breath, just filling your heart with that life-giving breath. And as the world delivers that life-giving breath to you, so you breathe that back out into the world in a living, breathing conversation. Just becoming aware of your heart space with every breath. With every breath, just feeling a softness in your body. Becoming aware of your heart, your physical heart that keeps you alive. Your loving, feeling, sensing heart that takes in the world as an organ of perception, as an organ of the imagination, in conversation with the world. And just continue to do this for a few more moments longer. Breathing into your heart, feeling your body soften. Feeling the loving embrace of the world in conversation with you and your heart. And I'm just going to bring your awareness now back to this time and space. So just become aware of the seat that you're sitting in, your environment. Bring your attention back to this time and space. And when you're ready, rejoin the room and open your eyes. Thank you, everyone. So normally when I'm delivering sessions on Goethean inquiry, for example, I would ask participants to go out into a green space and select a plant or a tree to connect with. And obviously I'm aware that we are time limited today, and as there is such a large number of you here, I'm going to ask you to enter with an image of a beautiful maple of several weeks ago. A preparation for this contemplation, I found this beautiful quote by the biologist Andreas Weber. And he says that trees qualify as symbols of life because in our experience, they really are life. After a symbolic death in winter, they burst into green again. They grow, they bloom and bear fruit without any involvement whatsoever from us. And I guess what I'm trying to say from this quote is that as the heart is a thinking and feeling organ of perception, and as we receive everything through the heart as a living, breathing symbol and metaphor, nature could therefore be taken as a symbolic mirror reflecting or expressing our inner lives. So whether what we are participating with or coming into relationship with is an image in a photograph, or a physical being, or a plant or a tree in our garden, when engaging with the faculty of the imagination in such a way, through the wisdom of the heart, I have found that it becomes possible to connect with the living quality of whatever it is that we come into relationship with, as both from the imagination's perspective are living symbols inviting us into relationship with them to experience life. So the contemplation. There are several instructions in order to do this. And obviously, number one, we have just opened our hearts and physically felt our heart's qualities of openness, kindness, love, and compassion. And the idea in this contemplation is to stay in this space and to come into living relationship with this beautiful image of this tree in the park without any preconceived mental models or theories, which is certainly Goethe's approach in step one of his methodology. And remaining, what we're doing in this contemplation is remaining in the heart space throughout and cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder as to what this contemplation may reveal to you. Listen with your heart, listen deeply, and just while you're in contemplation with this image, have an idea of what you can feel, hear, see, and sense. And then once you've done this, we'll do this, the whole contemplation will be about just over 10 minutes. So if you take 5 minutes for the first 4 steps, and then the 5th step to recreate your interaction with the tree in your imagination, again from your heart space, what do you particularly remember? So in this sense, close your eyes and remember the contemplation. What, if anything, surprised you? So if you have 5 minutes for the exercise from 1 to 4, just communing with the image that you see, and then 5 minutes for step 5. Now, I appreciate that we're on Zoom. What you can do in your view on the top right-hand side is you can actually shrink all of the thumbnails to hide anyone or anyone's camera, so you can actually see the image in its fullest sense. So please do that, and also switch your cameras off if you'd like to. And what I'll do is I'll bring you back after 10 minutes and get some sense of how you found the exercise. Does that sound okay, Mark and Andrew?
That sounds good. You're on full screen with the screen share right now, so it's looking fine.
Good. Okay, so 5 minutes for steps 1 to 4, and then 5 minutes for the recreation of the tree in your imagination. And feel free to turn your cameras off and go deeply into the image, and then we'll return after 10 minutes. Thank you. Right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to just start to bring you back now. Just like to just come back when you're ready. And I guess I'd just like to get a feeling, really, just some general comments about how you found that. Did anyone want to sort of put their hand up and actually speak out how that was for them?
We've got Stephen's got his hand raised. So, Stephen, would you like to speak? To go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Actually, I raised my hand quite a long time ago for something else, but I do have something to say, which is that I had an experience. Well, I cheated in a way in that rather than focus on the tree, I'm afraid I looked at something outside my own window, which was a rose bush. A rose bush, which was immediate. My experience was I began by observing things about it. I observed the fact that despite the time of year, it was still flowering. It had some rose hips on it and things. I noticed where I'd cut bits off and so on. And then I started to have more of a sense of the rose bush. I suppose to feel that it was kind of bravely struggling on, despite being right next to a hedge that cut out quite a lot of light. And then I sort of went beyond that into having a sense of it kind of relating to my own rootedness and also the rose relating to the heart. And I thought of the heart, the rose as being a symbol of love. I mean, I say thought, it was more feeling it rather than thinking it. And so it became sort of tapping into my own sense of rootedness in relation to relationship with others, and particularly in relationship with my partner. You know, the need to feel rooted in yourself in order to relate properly to other people. And all this was coming from the rose bush. Okay, that's what I have to say.
That's beautiful, and that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you. And is that a sort of way of engaging with something that you're used to doing?
Not really. I mean, I'm very observant of nature, but I don't normally kind of focus on something like that and sort of, I suppose, in a way, attempt to be the rose bush or be the tree rather than observing it.
Thank you.
Yes, that's a good thing to do. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody else want to say anything?
Yes, we've got Lucinda. Lucinda,
oh, lovely.
Unmuted, so go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, it was quite unexpected. The communication I got from the tree. It looked very beautiful, very graceful, but very delicate, and it made me think of a ballerina in a beautiful pink tutu, and how they look so graceful and delicate, and yet the strength and power and control that it lies deep at the core of them. So that was a very unexpected connection that I felt.
Right.
And as an aside, I've always been able to see what you might describe as auras around trees, or the energy field around trees. And it's huge. It's so massive. It looks like they're on fire. So the energy of trees.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Really
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. And it sounds like that was maybe a surprising interaction.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to share their experience?
We've got a comment from John in the chat. I'll read that out for you. John says there was a sense of aliveness of the tree and its relationship with its environment. We, the tree and I, were reaching out to one another.
Oh, that's beautiful. I have tingles. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, John. Thank you. I see Inna has got her hand up.
Inna, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi. I thought that the tree was standing there kind of very humbly, and it's so beautiful and unique, but it felt to me that it wasn't aware of with its own beauty. It's kind of like a bit shy among other bigger trees.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Yeah. And it's just wonderful to have, you know, your sharing. I know that we are obviously fast running towards lunch. So thank you so much. And maybe, you know, these experiences that you've shared are not an ordinary everyday level of awareness that one would maybe engage our natural environment. So it's just really beautiful to hear these experiences, and I'm sure, I hope all of the audience here today. And just to kind of finish off really just before lunch, really being in conversation with my own heart over the past 4 years and learning, my heart's been my teacher, really. And I suppose I've learnt that the heart is, or my heart in my own life has sort of started to become my compass and my guide towards a realization of what life really is. It's actually brimming with life and love. And as I say at the end of my thesis, having had this experience myself, I say the thought of my heart invites us to kindly and courageously break free from the rational ties that bind us, risk ourselves, imagine bravely, and step openly into the dance of life. Because when we see life in this way, it really is a dance. Everything is so alive with movement and dance. And I say we have nothing to lose by seeing in this way and everything to gain. And I was deeply, deeply moved by David sharing this morning, because the life that's been given back to me by engaging with my heart as a primary organ of perception and as my own teacher has provided me with a framework through which I can construct and reconstruct my life, and for learning and meaning making. And it, personally speaking, has offered me the possibility of becoming passionately and compassionately engaged with the world. And I firmly believe that such an engagement is a call, really, for us to live respectfully and reverentially with the world itself. And I think our hearts are calling us back home to ourselves, to not just see them as you know, a symbol of sentimentality, or, well, that's just the heart and that's not valid in our day-to-day life. It is, and it's probably the primary way of making sense of the world, because with it, one becomes more passionately and compassionately engaged with the world, which feeds into all of the issues and the problems that we're facing today. As David said this morning, I loved his quote, which was a planetary ethic of care. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for taking part today in this contemplation, for being so generous today with my session. And if you'd like to find out more about me and what I'm doing, you can find me through mythcosmologysacred.com or my own research website, which is heartsenseresearch.co.uk. And I think the PowerPoints are being sent out as well, and there are references at the end of the slideshow for all the people that I quoted today. So thank you from my heart to yours. Thank you so much. And I hope this has expanded your worldview a little bit more.
Thank you, Louise. That was tremendous. And it is delightful to have that space that you've provided for us to get this felt sense of what we've also been talking about in other ways earlier through the morning. I do hope that everyone feels full of spiritual possibility and a living awareness of things, and the many different points that have been talked about, and getting some sense of how you yourself might pick these things up. We're going to break for lunch now between 1 and 2. But the speakers from this morning particularly will be available informally at 1:30 to pick up further comments, thoughts, questions. This afternoon, I hope, is going to be as rich as this morning. We're going to be moving more into discussion, both about the topological sense in the challenge, in a way what feels like can be very difficult. Jules Evans has written about spiritual emergencies, for example, and William Rowlandson has also written about encountering the various things that can become aware to us in the psyche. And then we're coming to talk with Jeff Kripal at 3 o'clock. Myself and David will be talking with Jeff Kripal at 3 o'clock, one of the world's leading psychologists, investigators, and deeply thinking about what this means, not just for us individually, but how it connects back to academic disciplines and the state of the world today. So I hope you'll be able to join us this afternoon too. We'll break now, meeting back informally at 1:30, and then beginning formally with Jules and William at 2 o'clock.